You know that gut-wrenching ice in your veins feeling when your elderly mum calls you, sobbing uncontrollably. Now imagine getting that call while you're stuck hundreds of miles away at a national mayor's conference, only to discover the vindictive, power-hungry HOA president just ordered your childhood home bulldozed to make way for a parking lot. It sounds unbelievable, right? But what they didn't realize was that they had just picked a fight with the wrong city official. I held the keys to the city, and suddenly I had the power and the motivation to turn their meticulously planned scheme into a living nightmare. The real question became, how far would you go for revenge when everything you loved was on the line? Have you ever felt that agonizing helplessness, watching someone you cherish being relentlessly bullied? That's precisely the knot that twisted in my stomach, seeing my 78-year-old mum, frail and trembling, clutching yet another HOA violation notice in her weathered hands. But let me take you back to the beginning. It all started on a deceptively peaceful Sunday morning. I was dropping off Mum's weekly groceries, a ritual I'd kept every Sunday since Dad passed away 3 years prior, when I first saw her, Eleanor Vance, our newly elected, iron-fisted HOA president. She was prowling around Mum's front yard like a predator, armed with a measuring tape and a sneer, snapping photos with her phone. Mum's house wasn't grand, just a cozy, 2-story brick home, where decades of memories were etched into the walls. It was the place where Dad's handmade wind chimes still sang their gentle melody in the breeze, and Mum's prize-winning roses perfumed the air with their sweet, familiar scent. "Excuse me?" Eleanor's voice, sharp as broken glass, sliced through the morning calm. "These roses, Wash," she declared, waving her measuring tape menacingly close to Mum's face, "are exactly 3.2 inches over the regulation height." Her lip curled. "And these decorations," she sneered, gesturing disdainfully at Dad's cherished wind chimes, "are not on the approved list." I stepped forward, indignation flaring, ready to unleash a mayoral tirade, but Mum squeezed my arm, her touch surprisingly firm. "It's okay, honey," she whispered, her eyes pleading. "Don't make trouble. You have your reputation as mayor to think about." That was my mom, always putting others first, even with this viper practically breathing down her neck, worried about my career. If only I'd grasped the storm brewing on the horizon then. If only I hadn't just nodded, swallowed my anger, and driven away to my next city meeting, leaving her vulnerable. After that chilling encounter, the violation notices became a relentless barrage. First, it was the roses deemed too tall. Then, the unapproved wind chimes. Soon, Mum was being cited for everything imaginable. The mailbox, painted a non-regulation shade of beige, excessive bird activity at the feeders Dad built, even the wreath on her door, deemed seasonally inappropriate in July. Each notice carried a fine, each fine more exorbitant than the last. I attempted to reason with Eleanor at the following monthly HOA meeting, keeping my voice level, despite the fury simmering beneath. "These regulations weren't even drafted when my mother's house was built," I explained calmly. "She's lived here peacefully for 40 years." Eleanor just offered that infuriatingly smug smile, adjusting her designer glasses. "Rules are rules, Mayor Thompson," she replied, her tone dripping with mock deference. "We simply can't allow exceptions." The deliberate way she emphasized my title felt like a dare, a challenge to use my official position to intervene. But the moment that truly shattered my composure came one evening when I found Mum in tears, struggling to take down Dad's beloved ceramic angels from her garden trellis. "Eleanor says they're unauthorized structures," she sniffled, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped one. "She's threatening to put a lien on the house if I don't comply immediately." My blood ran cold. I helped Mum inside, made her some chamomile tea, my mind racing frantically. This wasn't just about roses and garden gnomes anymore. I'd seen that predatory glint in Eleanor Vance's eyes, the calculating way she kept mentioning declining property values and neighborhood standards. Something much bigger, much uglier was brewing beneath the surface. Later that night, as I was leaving Mom's, a sleek, expensive sedan parked across the street caught my eye. Through the tinted windows, I could just make out Eleanor Vance in deep conversation with someone. The logo on the car door sent a shiver down my spine. Golden Horizon Parking Solutions. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Maria Rodriguez, my old high school friend who now served alongside me on the city council. Check your email. Now, you need to see this. My heart pounded as I pulled over and opened the attachment. It was a draft proposal for a neighborhood improvement project. My breath hitched as I scanned the details, my eyes landing on the proposed location. The map pinpointed a cluster of properties, including Mom's. At that exact moment, Mum called out from her porch, "Bless her heart, don't forget your lunch container, honey." She stood there smiling, framed by her beloved roses, unknowingly occupying the very spot marked for demolition on the proposal map. Driving home, 1,000 questions swirled in my head like a tornado. Why was Eleanor really measuring property lines with such obsessive precision? What sinister plan was she hatching with Golden Horizon Parking Solutions? And the most chilling question of all, how far would she actually go to seize what she wanted? I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, a plan, raw and fueled by righteous anger, already beginning to form. Eleanor Vance might think she held all the cards in this manicured, rule-obsessed neighborhood, but she'd made one critical oversight. I hadn't navigated the political complexities of being mayor for 5 years without learning precisely how to fight back. The real challenge wasn't if I could stop her, but if I could expose her corrupt scheme before it was devastatingly too late. I'll never forget the sickening lurch in my stomach the morning I saw Eleanor Vance standing brazenly in front of Mom's house again, iPad in hand, snapping photos while talking animatedly on her phone. My blood turned to ice when I overheard her say, clear as day, "Yes, this is the property I mentioned. It's perfect for the new development." She jumped guiltily when she noticed me watching, instantly plastering on that fake saccharine smile. That evening felt heavy with foreboding. I sat at Mom's familiar kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of her calming chamomile tea, watching her own hands tremble as she showed me the latest stack of HOA violation notices. 37, she whispered, her voice cracking. In just 2 weeks, tears welled in her eyes. They're even complaining about the bird feeder your father built. That simple wooden feeder had faithfully stood in our backyard for 25 years, a small beacon attracting cheerful cardinals and blue jays, bringing Mum a sliver of joy each morning since Dad passed. It felt like Eleanor was deliberately targeting every piece of Dad's memory, every source of Mum's comfort. I resolved then and there to attend the next HOA meeting, not as the mayor, but simply as a daughter pushed too far. The community center buzzed with neighbors, but the moment I walked in, an uneasy silence fell. Eleanor Vance presided at the head table, her perfectly manicured nails drumming an impatient rhythm against her sleek laptop. "Mayor Thompson," she purred, emphasizing my title like a veiled insult. "How nice of you to finally grace us with your presence." The meeting started predictably enough. Mundane discussions about community pool hours and acceptable fence paint colors. Then, Maria Rodriguez, my steadfast friend and council ally, discreetly slipped me a folded note. Check item 7 on the agenda. My stomach clenched. When Eleanor reached item 7, her voice took on an unnervingly smooth quality. Proposal for Community Enhancement Project, partnership with Golden Horizon Parking Solutions. My blood ran cold. She clicked through a slick, professionally designed presentation, showcasing glossy plans for a much-needed parking facility intended to serve the growing community needs, and the proposed location. A cluster of so-called underperforming properties, a description that tragically, pointedly included my mother's cherished home. The slides depicted a gleaming, impersonal multi-story parking structure where our family home now stood, complete with exciting retail opportunities and promises of enhanced revenue streams. Fighting to keep my voice steady, masking the inferno raging inside, I raised my hand. "Ms. Vance," I began, feeling every eye in the room fix on me, "have the affected homeowners actually been consulted regarding this ambitious proposal?" The air crackled with tension. Eleanor's plastic smile never wavered. "The HOA board," she replied coolly, "is fully empowered to make decisions for the greater good of the community. Your mother's very quaint property style is unfortunately impacting neighborhood values negatively." Her condescension was palpable. After the meeting adjourned amidst stunned whispers, Maria pulled me aside urgently. "There's more," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "I've seen Eleanor meeting with executives from Golden Horizon Parking 3 times this month alone, privately. They're not just talking about a parking lot, Mayor. They're discussing a whole commercial complex." That night, sleep was impossible. Fueled by coffee and fury, I pulled out my city-issued laptop and began a deep dive into city records, archived property maps, and the tangled web of HOA bylaws. Something about the whole situation felt profoundly wrong, dissonant. The HOA's jurisdiction had clearly defined boundaries, and according to the older maps, Mom's property sat precariously close to the edge, possibly even straddling it. I needed concrete information, but Eleanor, anticipating my move, had already blocked my official requests for HOA documents, cynically citing a conflict of interest due to my position as mayor and my relationship with Mom. The next morning, frustration mounting, I took an unconventional step. I hired a discreet private investigator to dig into Golden Horizon Parking Solutions. While awaiting his findings, I visited Mom, only to find her distraught once again. Eleanor had dispatched 2 stony-faced property inspectors who spent over an hour meticulously photographing every nook and cranny of Mom's house, invasively documenting supposed violations. The beautiful rose bushes Dad planted for their 40th anniversary now bore ugly orange tape, marked for immediate removal. It felt like a desecration. As I prepared to leave, heart heavy with anger, something odd caught my eye through Mom's kitchen window. Across the way, in her own backyard, Eleanor Vance was engaged in what looked like a heated argument with a man in an expensive suit. Instinctively, I grabbed my phone, zooming in to capture a picture. Just as I clicked, the man turned, and I nearly dropped my phone in shock. It was Richard Vance, Eleanor's husband. Why were they having such a tense, clandestine meeting in their backyard instead of his corporate office or the HOA office? The answer arrived with jarring clarity the very next day when my investigator called. "Mayor Thompson," his voice was grave, "you're going to want to sit down for this. Golden Horizon Parking Solutions, it's a subsidiary. Its parent company is Vance Development Corporation. Richard Vance, Eleanor's husband, is the CEO." I leaned back in my chair, the breath knocked out of me, the puzzle pieces clicking into place with horrifying speed. The relentless harassment campaign against Mom, The trumped-up violations, the rushed emergency proposals, the blocked documents. It wasn't merely about abstract property values or a desperate need for parking. This was naked greed. It was about power, corruption, and millions of dollars in potential profit channeled directly into the Vance family pockets. And in her arrogance, Eleanor had no idea. She'd just handed me the smoking gun I needed to bring her entire corrupt empire crashing down. As I walked to my car later that evening, Eleanor's voice, laced with false concern, called out from her porch. "Mayor Thompson, I certainly hope you're not planning to make this personal. After all," she added with a dismissive wave, "business is business." I turned slowly, meeting her cold gaze, a newfound resolve hardening within me. "You're absolutely right, Eleanor," I replied, my voice quiet but firm. "Business is business, and you," I let the words hang in the air, "have absolutely no idea who you're dealing with." My heart stopped, hammering against my ribs when I saw the screen. 15 missed calls from Mum. I was trapped in a stuffy, over-air-conditioned conference room in Washington, D.C., enduring yet another mind-numbing presentation about municipal parking meters when my phone began buzzing relentlessly again. This time, I snatched it up. "Sweetie, oh thank God, there are big yellow machines outside." Mum's voice was thin, choked with terror. "They're tearing up my garden, my roses, Dad's roses, they're crushing everything." Adrenaline surged. I slammed my laptop shut and bolted from the conference room, ignoring the startled faces, not caring about protocol or presentations. "Mom, stay inside!" I yelled into the phone, already dialing 911 on my other line. "Lock the doors. I'm calling the police right now." But the sounds filtering through the phone painted a scene of escalating horror, making my blood run cold. The sickening crunch of splintering wood, the sharp shatter of glass. Mom's terrified scream, nearly drowned out by the ominous, earth-shaking rumble of heavy machinery drawing closer. They say I have 10 minutes, Mum cried, hysteria mounting. 10 minutes to get out. Eleanor's here, with men in suits, waving papers, something about structural problems, emergency orders. They won't listen, honey, they won't listen. My fingers flew across my phone, desperately trying Eleanor Vance. Straight to voicemail. The HOA office line? Endless ringing. I even called our family lawyer frantic, but it was Sunday morning. Every agonizing second that ticked by felt like an eternity as I listened, helpless, to the sounds of Mum's life being systematically destroyed. "The police are here," Mum whispered, a fragile thread of hope in her voice, instantly extinguished. "But Eleanor's showing them some official-looking papers. They're just standing there, watching. Oh, please, what do I do?" The feeling of utter powerlessness was suffocating, trapped thousands of miles away, while my mother faced this nightmare alone. "Mom, listen to me," I commanded, trying to inject calm I didn't feel. "Get your purse, your medicine, and the photo albums right now, and Dad's flag, the one from the war. Don't argue, just do it." Finally, Maria Rodriguez, my rock, my friend who thankfully lived just 2 streets over from Mom, picked up her phone. "I'm already here," she said, her voice tight with barely contained fury. "Oh, Mayor, it's bad, really bad. They've got 3 bulldozers and a full demolition crew. And Eleanor, she's on her porch across the street, sipping champagne like she's watching fireworks. Your mum needs to get out now. They aren't stopping for anything or anyone." Through Mum's line, I heard more glass breaking. Mum was sobbing uncontrollably now. "The photos, Dad's workshop albums, there are too many. Maria's trying to help, but they won't give us more time." "Leave them," I ordered, hating the words even as they left my lips, the pragmatism tasting like ash in my mouth. "Just get out, Mom. Please, just get yourself out safe, now." The next few minutes dissolved into a frantic, desperate blur of phone calls to the governor's office, frantically texting every media contact I had in the state, activating my city's emergency response team liaison. But it was like screaming into a void, pushing against an unmovable, indifferent brick wall of bureaucracy and distance. By the time I finally got through to someone with the authority to intervene, it was horrifyingly, irrevocably too late. I watched it happen. Maria, bless her heart, held up her phone, live streaming the sickening destruction. I watched, numb with disbelief and boiling rage, as the house where I grew up, where Dad taught me to ride my bike on the cracked sidewalk, where Mum baked cookies that scented the whole block every Sunday, reduced to nothing more than jagged splinters, broken bricks, and swirling dust in under an hour. And Eleanor Vance stood there, the entire time, sipping her champagne, that smug, triumphant smirk plastered on her face as she observed my mother collapsing, sobbing uncontrollably into Maria's protective arms amidst the ruins of her life. The moment my plane touched down, 6 agonizing hours later, I drove straight to Maria's house, where Mum was staying, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. She looked impossibly small, fragile, clutching Dad's carefully folded flag, and her small medicine bag, the only tangible remnants she'd managed to salvage from 40 years of memories. The ceramic angels Dad made, her treasured recipe books filled with generations of family secrets, their wedding album, everything else pulverized, gone forever. I tried to stop them, honey, she whispered, her hands still shaking violently as she held mine. I kept telling them, my daughter's the mayor. But Eleanor, she just laughed right in my face. She said, not in this neighborhood, she isn't. I held Mum close while she cried herself into an exhausted, grief-stricken sleep on Maria's couch. But beneath my own sorrow, my mind was a whirlwind of cold, calculating fury. Eleanor Vance thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally broken us, crushed our spirits along with our home. She had absolutely no idea what she had just unleashed. Tomorrow, I would show Eleanor Vance and everyone who enabled her exactly what being mayor meant. But first, under the cloak of darkness and grief, I needed to make some crucial calls. As Mum finally drifted off, her breathing shallow and uneven, I noticed something crumpled sticking out of her borrowed jacket pocket. It was one of the HOA violation notices, but looking closer, something seemed off. The date printed on it was impossible. It predated the supposed discovery of the violation. And Eleanor's signature, it looked hurried, perhaps even forged. My heart gave a small, hopeful leap. I carefully smoothed it out and grabbed my phone, snapping clear pictures. Maybe, just maybe, in her haste and arrogance, Eleanor wasn't as meticulous with her corrupt paperwork as she thought. Maybe this was the loose thread that, when pulled, would unravel her entire rotten scheme. Sitting there in the dimly lit room, watching Mum sleep, the faint scent of dust and destruction clinging to her, I made a silent, ironclad promise. We wouldn't just rebuild her house. We would ensure that Eleanor Vance and her corrupt HOA cronies would never, ever be in a position to inflict this kind of pain on another family again. They thought they'd seen the last of us, thought they'd buried us under the rubble. In reality, this was just the beginning. I barely slept that night. The image of Mum curled up on Maria's couch, clutching the single, slightly damaged family photo she'd managed to rescue, searing itself into my brain. The horrifying replay of Eleanor Vance coolly sipping champagne while my mother's world crumbled, fueled a cold, hard rage unlike anything I'd ever felt. Around 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, I knew quiet grief wasn't enough. Enough was unequivocally enough. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline, as I pulled up the city's digitized property records on my laptop. Something about that demolition, the sheer speed and brazenness of it, felt fundamentally wrong. Even the most aggressive HOAs couldn't orchestrate an emergency demolition that fast, without cutting corners, without proper permits and due process. Maria had drilled into me, during my first challenging year as mayor, "Trust your gut, mayor. It's usually smarter than the paperwork." Right now, my gut was screaming that Eleanor Vance, blinded by greed and arrogance, had finally tripped herself up. I called Maria, not caring about the ungodly hour. "Maria, I need access," I said, the moment she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "The old property maps, the historical surveys, the ones from before the Vance HOA was even established." 20 minutes later, she was at my door, laptop under her arm, her eyes sharp with determination despite the hour. We spread everything out across my kitchen table: old faded maps, digital records, Maria's notes from previous council zoning meetings, while Mum slept fitfully in the next room. "Look at this," Maria whispered, her finger tracing a faint blue line on an old, hand-drawn survey map from the 1970s. The original property line demarcation. According to this, officially recorded with the county, your mum's front yard sits outside the established HOA jurisdiction by exactly 3.5 feet. My heart started hammering against my ribs. "And where? I asked, my voice tight, already sensing the answer. "Did they physically start the demolition?" Maria quickly pulled up the photos I'd taken earlier that day, showing the initial point of impact, right at the front steps. She confirmed grimly, well within that 3.5-foot non-HOA zone. Every swing of that bulldozer's arm on Mom's property had been illegal from the very first impact. But that wasn't all. As we dug deeper, cross-referencing permit applications with business licenses, something even more explosive leapt out from the screen. Golden Horizon Parking Solutions wasn't just some random developer. It was wholly owned by a parent company, Vance Development Corporation. CEO, Richard Vance, Eleanor's husband. The same company that had been awarded the exclusive multi-million-dollar contract for the demolition and the subsequent parking lot construction. A closed loop of corruption, plain as day. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from David Chen, my old college roommate, now an investigative reporter at the local news station. "Check your email. Secure link. You need to see this." My fingers fumbled slightly as I opened the encrypted video file he'd sent. And there it was. Grainy but unmistakable security footage from the back alley of the community center, time-stamped just last week. It showed Eleanor and Richard Vance meeting furtively with the head of the demolition company, exchanging thick manila envelopes under the dim glow of a security light. It screamed, "Kickback." The first rays of dawn were painting the sky pink when we finally finished connecting all the damning dots. Eleanor hadn't just ruthlessly bulldozed my mum's home out of spite or a twisted sense of order. She had meticulously orchestrated an entire criminal enterprise, the escalating fabricated violation notices designed to create a pretext, the falsified emergency demolition order pushed through by leveraging her position, the lucrative parking contract steered directly to her husband's company. It was a breathtakingly audacious plan, fueled by pure greed. And in her blinding arrogance, she'd gotten sloppy, leaving a trail of digital and physical evidence so clear even a first-year law student could follow it straight to her door. I made Mum her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, extra syrup, forcing a reassuring smile telling her to trust me that things were going to change. Then I called an emergency meeting with the city's sharpest legal minds. They listened, jaws tight with disbelief, then slowly, grimly becoming energized. This wasn't just about one homeowner. This was the kind of systemic corruption case that could set legal precedents statewide. By noon, we had forged a rock-solid legal and political strategy. That afternoon, projecting an outward calm I barely felt, I walked into the HOA administrative office. I politely asked Eleanor's flustered assistant to see the permits for my mother's demolition. The young woman stammered something about them being still in process or filed off-site. I offered a small, tight smile, remembering Dad's old poker advice: keep your friends close, your evidence closer, and never let them see you sweat. Just then, Eleanor herself strutted in, radiating smug confidence, that familiar, infuriating smirk firmly in place. "Mayor Thompson, what a surprise," she drawled. "Coming to terms with progress, are we?" She gestured vaguely towards the window, where the raw, gaping wound of Mom's demolished lot was visible. I watched her face intently, savoring the moment as I placed a single glossy photograph onto her pristine desk, the clearest screenshot from the security footage showing her back alley envelope exchange. Her smirk didn't just vanish, it evaporated, replaced by a flicker of pure panic. Where did you get that?" she demanded, her voice suddenly sharp, reaching instinctively for the photo. I smoothly pulled it back, adding more documents to the pile like dealing cards in a high-stakes game. "Property line surveys," I said calmly, laying down the map. "Permit violations," I added the illegally dated notice. "Corporate ownership records," down went the Vance development link. "Contract award irregularities." The pile grew. "You know, Eleanor," I continued, my voice dangerously soft, "my dad always used to say the best revenge is serving up justice, preferably with a hefty side of karma." The color drained completely from her face as the full weight of her exposure slammed into her. She fumbled for her phone, undoubtedly trying to reach her husband or her lawyer, but I was already turning towards the door. "Oh, and Eleanor?" I paused, looking back over my shoulder. "Tonight's emergency HOA meeting? It's going to be very interesting. You might want to bring your lawyer, both of you." As I walked briskly back to my car, the sound of her frantic, panicked dialing followed me. But it was far too late. The meticulously compiled evidence was already securely filed with the district attorney's office, and encrypted copies were winging their way to every single HOA board member's private email address at that very moment. Mom's prize-winning roses might be tragically gone, buried under rubble and greed. But tonight, justice was about to bloom spectacularly in their place. I glanced at my watch. 6 hours until the HOA meeting. 6 hours until Eleanor Vance, her husband, and their cronies learned precisely what happens when you bulldoze the wrong mayor's mother's house. And this time, I would make absolutely certain every single neighbor they'd ever intimidated or wronged was there in the front row to witness her meticulously constructed world crumble, just as she had callously watched Mom's home fall. I walked into City Hall that morning carrying a heavy briefcase and an even heavier heart, but also a spine made of steel. The emergency public meeting I'd called wasn't just about Mom's demolished house anymore. It was about finally giving a voice to every family Eleanor Vance and her tight circle of HOA cronies had systematically bullied, fined, and intimidated over the years. My hands might have been trembling slightly under the table, but my voice, when I spoke, was going to be crystal clear and unwavering. The council chamber was packed, standing room only. News cameras lined the back wall, their small red lights blinking like wary, watchful eyes. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation and anger. Eleanor Vance sat defiantly in the front row, dressed in an immaculate designer suit, flashing that practiced, artificial smile she always wore when she believed she was untouchably in control. Incredibly, she even had the audacity to give me a little wave. I stepped up to the podium, took a deep breath, and met her gaze directly. "Last week," I began, my voice resonating through the suddenly silent chamber. "Many of you witnessed, either in person or through harrowing videos, as bulldozers unlawfully destroyed my mother's home. A home she lived in, paid taxes on, and lovingly maintained for 40 years. I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. The HOA, led by Ms. Vance, claimed it was a necessary emergency demolition due to fabricated safety concerns. Another pause. Today I'm going to show you with irrefutable evidence what really happened. The first slide clicked onto the large screen behind me, the meticulously scanned property maps from 1975, clearly showing the original neighborhood layout before the Vance-era HOA bylaws were even conceived. Simultaneously, Maria Rodriguez and several council aides began distributing copies throughout the audience. Eleanor's smile twitched almost imperceptibly at the edges. "Notice these clearly marked boundary lines," I stated, using a laser pointer to highlight the relevant section on the map. According to official county records, the HOA's legal jurisdiction ends exactly 3.5 feet before my mother's front porch, the point where Ms. Vance ordered the demolition to begin. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Therefore, every inch of that demolition, from the very first impact, was illegal. Whispers grew into angry murmurs. Across the aisle, I saw Richard Vance shift uncomfortably in his expensive suit, his face paling. But I was just getting started. "Now," I continued, clicking to the next slide, which displayed corporate registration documents, "let's talk about Golden Horizon Parking Solutions." The name alone drew groans from some residents. The company awarded the lucrative contract to demolish my mother's home and subsequently build a parking structure on her property. It might interest you to know, I let the revelation hang for a beat, that Golden Horizon is a wholly owned subsidiary of Vance Development Corporation, owned and operated by Mr. Richard Vance, husband of HOA President Eleanor Vance. This time, the reaction was explosive. Shouts of corruption and conflict of interest erupted. Eleanor's face transformed from smug confidence to a mask of ghostly white shock in seconds. I saw several other HOA board members physically lean away from her, whispering urgently among themselves, their own faces reflecting dawning horror and betrayal. "But wait," I projected my voice over the growing din. Feeling a surge of righteous power, "It gets even better." I gestured to a large box placed beside the podium. "Inside this box are hundreds of violation notices," I declared, pulling out sheaf after sheaf of paper, collected from dozens of residents in this neighborhood over the past 3 years. We analyzed the pattern. Every single one of these excessive, often nonsensical violations was issued to properties whose owners later reported feeling pressured or harassed into selling their homes below market value. I looked around the room, making eye contact with familiar faces. And guess who ultimately purchased many of those properties, often through opaque shell companies? I paused dramatically. "I'll give you one guess." The chamber erupted. I saw Mrs. Gable, who tearfully told me about losing her beloved heritage garden to HOA fines last year, nodding furiously, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Henderson, forced to sell the historic home his grandfather built after a relentless campaign of citations, was openly weeping, comforted by his wife. That's when Eleanor Vance made her fatal mistake. She leapt to her feet, losing all composure, her voice shrill with desperation. "This is outrageous, a political witch hunt. You're just bitter and vindictive about your mother's worthless old house." The room fell deathly silent, stunned by her venomous outburst. A slow, cold smile spread across my face for the first time that day. "Thank you, Eleanor," I said quietly, the microphone amplifying my words. "Thank you for that revealing outburst. Because now," I nodded to Maria, who stood ready at the AV controls, "I'd like to play something for the council, the press, and all your neighbors." Maria hit play. Eleanor's own voice filled the chamber, captured clearly on the security footage audio feed, coolly discussing kickback percentages with the demolition company representative, outlining the plan to use code enforcement pressure to acquire properties for the Golden Horizon project. A plan hatched months ago. The next few hours were pure, unadulterated chaos. Faced with undeniable proof and the wrath of their neighbors, several of Eleanor's fellow board members, desperate to save their own skins, began confessing everything. The conspiracy to manipulate property values, the falsification of violation notices, the secret meetings, the kickbacks funneled through Richard Vance's company. It all came pouring out in a torrent of self-preservation. Richard Vance attempted to slip out the side door, but found uniformed city police officers politely blocking his exit. Apparently, wire fraud and conspiracy across state lines attract federal attention. I saved my final move for last. Standing tall, I addressed the council directly. As mayor of this city, exercising the authority granted under municipal code, I declared, my voice ringing with authority, I am hereby invoking Emergency Order 47B, effective immediately. All assets of this homeowners association are frozen, pending a full forensic audit and criminal investigation. I looked directly at Eleanor, her face now a mixture of disbelief and terror, remembering Mom's trembling hands and broken sobs. Furthermore, I am establishing a victims' compensation fund to be seeded by these frozen assets to begin making restitution to every resident harmed by this board's corrupt practices. The council vote was swift and unanimous. Eleanor Vance, sputtering incoherently about her rights and lawyers, was escorted out of the chamber in handcuffs. Her husband, already pale and sweating, was frantically dialing his attorney. The remaining board members looked like they'd seen ghosts, their futures crumbling before their eyes. But the true moment of victory, the one that mattered most, came afterward. As the chamber slowly cleared amidst the buzz of reporters, Mum walked quietly through the main doors, carrying her salvaged box of photos. The entire room, council members, neighbors, even the hardened press corps, spontaneously rose to their feet in a silent wave of respect and support. She came straight to me, hugged me tight, and whispered in my ear, tears finally flowing freely, but this time, tears of relief. "You did good, baby. Your father would be so proud. You did real good." As reporters swarmed around us, cameras flashing, someone shouted a question. Was I worried about political fallout or retaliation? I looked straight into the nearest camera lens, thinking of Mum, Mrs. Gable, Mr. Henderson, and countless others, and said the words I'd been waiting weeks to declare publicly. In this city, we take care of our own. We protect our neighbors. And if anyone ever thinks they can bully, cheat, or corrupt their way through our communities again, let them remember this day. Let them remember what happens when you mess with the wrong mayor's mama. The headlines the next day screamed variations of "Mayor dismantles corrupt HOA empire." But for me, the real victory was much simpler, much quieter. That night, Mum slept soundly through the night in my guest room. The first peaceful sleep she'd had since losing her home. Eleanor Vance's reign of terror was definitively over. And now, our real work, healing the wounds and rebuilding our community, stronger and more united than ever, was just beginning. I nearly dropped my morning coffee mug when Mum called me at dawn, her voice not fearful this time, but trembling with a strange mixture of shock and righteous satisfaction. "Sweetie," she breathed into the phone, "you need to see this." I rushed over to the property, site of the new house construction, to find a truly glorious sight. There stood Eleanor Vance, at the edge of what used to be her precious, ill-gotten parking lot project, her face a mask of impotent fury as a city construction crew systematically tore up the newly poured asphalt. The state attorney general had secured an injunction, halting all Vance development projects pending the ongoing federal investigation. The look of utter defeat on Eleanor's face, that alone was worth every single sleepless night, every ounce of stress I'd endured building the case against her. The past year had been an emotional roller coaster, filled with legal battles, community healing, and ultimately profound victories, each one sweeter than the last. After the city council swiftly moved to dissolve the existing HOA board and place the association under temporary municipal receivership, investigators uncovered even more dirt. A staggering pattern of similar schemes Eleanor had allegedly orchestrated in 3 other neighborhoods across the county, always targeting vulnerable elderly residents, always leveraging her husband's connections, always ending with Vance Development acquiring properties under questionable circumstances. The FBI got involved when the money trail led investigators to some very interesting offshore accounts. Justice, it seemed, was just getting started with the Vances. I still vividly remember the day we broke ground on Mum's new house. It wasn't just a construction crew. The whole neighborhood turned out, shovels in hand, faces beaming with shared purpose. Even quiet Mrs. Gable, who rarely left her house after her own HOA ordeal, was there, offering thermoses of hot chocolate. Maria organized a massive potluck picnic right there on the empty lot, and someone spontaneously started a GoFundMe page, not just for Mum, but for all the families financially harmed by Eleanor's reign. The local news stations couldn't get enough of the narrative, "Corrupt HOA meets its match," and "Mayor Mum fights back" became their favorite recurring headlines. Mum's new house took shape steadily, built with care and community spirit. We made sure to do it right. Mum insisted on keeping the same familiar layout as her old home, the one filled with decades of memories. But I secretly worked with the architect to add some crucial upgrades: wider doorways to accommodate her walker easily, a comfortable master bedroom suite on the first floor, and a state-of-the-art security system, just in case. Critically, the garden space was doubled with a special, sun-drenched section dedicated exclusively to cultivating Dad's favorite varieties of roses. Now, every morning, Mum sits in her beautiful new sunroom, sipping her tea, contentedly watching her roses climb higher and more vibrant than Eleanor Vance's punitive ruler could ever have measured. Last week, during the joyful, slightly overwhelming housewarming party, little Timmy from next door tugged on my sleeve and asked wide-eyed why so many grown-ups were crying happy tears. Kneeling down, I told him, "Sometimes, Timmy, making things right takes a long, hard fight, but seeing everyone happy and safe together, that's always worth fighting for." The contested land where Eleanor's parking lot was supposed to stand, it's now the thriving Thompson Memorial Community Garden. Dad would have loved that. Managed by a volunteer committee of residents who genuinely care about their neighbors, it's bursting with vegetables, herbs, and flowers. We dedicated a section where local school kids, like the Chen family's children, come after school to learn how to grow their own food. It's become a true neighborhood hub. Eleanor Vance's carefully constructed empire crumbled with astonishing speed. Facing mountains of evidence and public disgrace, her husband, Richard, filed for divorce almost immediately after the scandal broke, draining their joint accounts and reportedly fleeing to Florida with his secretary. The last confirmed sighting of Eleanor involved her frantically loading possessions into a U-Haul truck under the cloak of midnight, desperately trying to dodge the relentless reporters still camped outside her McMansion, which was soon seized as part of the asset forfeiture case. Karma, as they say, has a remarkably efficient way of catching up. Perhaps the best part? Yesterday, I officially signed the new statewide Homeowner Protection Act into law. Maria and I worked tirelessly with legal experts and legislators to draft it, embedding robust safeguards to ensure no HOA in our state could ever again wield unchecked power to harass, fine unjustly, or seize property through loopholes and intimidation. We included specific, enhanced protections for elderly and disabled residents and mandated strict transparency and oversight requirements for any major HOA proposed property developments or special assessments. Mum sat proudly in the front row at the signing ceremony, wearing Dad's favorite old cardigan, her face absolutely beaming. This morning, as I helped Mum plant 2 new rose bushes along her front walkway, defiant symbols of resilience and beauty, she pulled out an old, worn photo album. Inside, tucked between pages, was a faded picture of me, age 8, wearing Dad's oversized suit jacket, standing on our old front porch, pretending to give important speeches to the squirrels. You always said you wanted to help people, stand up for what's right, she smiled, her eyes glistening as she wiped away a happy tear. Your father, oh, he would be bursting with pride seeing how you did just that. The entire neighborhood feels different now, lighter, more connected. People wave from their porches, stop to chat over fences, share garden bounty, replacing the suspicion and fear that Eleanor's regime fostered with genuine neighborliness. Mrs. Gable brings Mum homemade tamales every Sunday without fail. Even a couple of the former HOA board members, those not facing criminal charges, publicly admitted they were wrong and now actively volunteer at our monthly neighborhood cleanup days trying to make amends. As I sit here now in Mom's bright, sunny new kitchen, watching her happily humming Dad's favorite tune while arranging freshly baked cookies on a platter for the neighborhood kids heading home from school, I can't help but reflect on how close we came to losing absolutely everything. But sometimes, paradoxically, the most devastating moments in life become the catalysts for the most profound and positive changes. The framed newspaper article, hanging proudly on Mum's kitchen wall, says it all. Local mayor turns personal tragedy into community triumph. Today, I'm packing my bags again, heading to another national mayor's conference. This time, however, I'm not going just to listen. I'm going to share our city's story, presenting the Homeowner Protection Act as a model, hoping to help other cities safeguard their residents from predatory HOA abuses. And guess who insists on coming along? Mum. She says her new mission in life is to be a voice, a fierce advocate for all the seniors who feel too intimidated or overwhelmed to speak up against injustice. Looking at her now, confidently arranging cookies and mentally rehearsing her planned remarks for the conference's community advocacy panel, I see that same quiet, unwavering strength that carried us both through the darkest days of this past year. And you know what? Eleanor Vance may have succeeded in tearing down our old house, brick by painful brick. But in doing so, ironically, she inadvertently helped us build something infinitely stronger, more resilient, and far more valuable, a true, interconnected, and vigilant community. The story you've just heard is a fictionalized account created for informational and entertainment purposes. While inspired by real-life issues, specific events and characters are fabricated. HOA rules, regulations, and state laws vary significantly. Always conduct your own thorough research and consult with qualified legal professionals or trusted local experts for accurate information and guidance regarding your specific situation and community. What are your thoughts on this story? Have you ever had frustrating experiences with an HOA? Share your stories and opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more stories about justice, community, and overcoming adversity, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.